The year is 1914. The world seems tranquil. Major European cities are bustling with construction, scientists are inventing new technologies, and people believe the future will be peaceful and prosperous. But beneath the surface, something is brewing. All the great powers England, Germany, Russia, France, Austria-Hungary are suspicious of each other. They're forming secret alliances, strengthening their militaries, and developing advanced weaponry. But why? This tension is like embers waiting to ignite. All it takes is one spark, and that spark came from a small city called Sarajevo, a place many Europeans didn't even know existed. That's where an event would unfold and change the world forever. But the question remains, why were all these nations seemingly ready for war? What were they afraid of, or what did they desire? Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand visits the city with his wife. But they're unaware that among the crowds, there are 7 armed young men ready to kill. One of them is Gavrilo Princip, a member of the secret Serbian group known as the Black Hand. Their goal, to send a message to the Empire, leave our land. Amidst the chaos and initial failures of the assassins, fate brings Franz Ferdinand and Princip together again by chance at a street corner. Without hesitation, 2 bullets are fired. The world falls silent. Austria is outraged. But this isn't just about revenge. The assassination is only the beginning. Austria doesn't just want to capture the perpetrators, they want to weaken Serbia. And behind the scenes, other major powers start to move. War hasn't started, but it's getting close. After the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, Austria-Hungary sent an ultimatum to Serbia. The terms, harsh demands almost impossible to fulfill entirely. Serbia was given just 48 hours to comply. The world began to grow uneasy. Serbia accepted most of the demands, except one, allowing Austrian police to enter and interrogate Serbian citizens. That was seen as a violation of sovereignty. Austria was already prepared, they wanted war. But Serbia had a powerful friend, Russia, and Russia wouldn't stand idly by. Within days, Russian troops began to mobilize. Seeing this, Germany, Austria's ally, immediately issued threats. They demanded Russia back down. Russia refused. And like falling dominoes, Europe couldn't turn back in a short time. What's striking? All of this had been planned long before. War wasn't just about one bullet. It was because for years, the great powers had been crafting a mad strategy. Before the Sarajevo bullet was fired, European generals and politicians were already primed for war. Germany had the Schlieffen Plan in place. If war broke out, they'd attack France via Belgium, then swiftly pivot east to face Russia, England. They were quietly prepared to support France if Germany breached Belgium's neutrality, safeguarded by international treaties. Russia, meanwhile, had mobilized on a massive scale to back Serbia at a moment's notice. When tensions flared, each side sprang into action, executing their plans without hesitation. No time for reflection, no room for peace. Every defensive move was perceived as a threat by the enemy. The prevailing mindset was, strike first or be struck. This mentality fueled the war's explosive escalation. It wasn't that one nation sought war, but rather that all feared being left vulnerable. July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary officially declares war on Serbia. Russia immediately mobilizes its troops to protect Serbia. August 1st, Germany declares war on Russia. August 3rd, Germany declares war on France. August 4th, Germany invades neutral Belgium, prompting England to enter the war. In just a matter of days, 5 world powers declare war on each other, drawing in smaller nations. What started as a local conflict in the Balkans rapidly escalates into a global war. But there's a larger question. Why did the people support this war? In many countries, citizens greeted the war with enthusiasm, believing it would be quick and easily won. They had no idea that instead of glory, they would face the hell of muddy trenches. The world had plunged into an abyss, and there seemed to be no way out. Young soldiers from France, Germany, and England headed to the battlefield with high spirits, thinking the war would last only a few weeks. But reality hit hard. They were stuck in trenches for years. World War I gave birth to the horrific tactic of trench warfare. Thousands of kilometers of trenches were dug from the North Sea to Switzerland, where soldiers lived in mud, filth, and fear. Bombs exploded daily, bullets whizzed through the night, and poison gas was thrown mercilessly. Rats, lice, and disease became their second enemy. Every inch of ground was fought over with blood. It was in these trenches that the dream of a glorious war was shattered. Soldiers began to realize they weren't heroes, they were just small pawns in the grand game of the powerful, and this was just the beginning. By 1915, millions of soldiers had already lost their lives, yet none of the nations were willing to surrender. Why? The answer lies in one word: pride. Each government feared that if they backed down, their people would view it as defeat. They worried about losing power. They told their citizens, "We've sacrificed so much already. If we give up now, it will all be for nothing." So, to preserve their pride, they continued to send millions of troops to the battlefield. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, generals had no new strategies. They just kept repeating old tactics: attack, shoot, destroy. On paper, they all believed they could win big with one decisive strike. But in reality, each attack only added to the casualty count. The world had fallen into a psychological trap. The war had to continue. Simply because it had already started, logic no longer applied. All that mattered now was ego and bullets. What began as a European conflict gradually engulfed the entire world. Britain and France called upon troops from their colonies in India, Africa, and the Middle East, forcing millions of non-Europeans to fight in foreign wars. Japan, as a British ally, attacked German bases in Asia. In Africa, colonial troops fought on behalf of nations that weren't even their homelands. Even the seas weren't safe, as German U-boats targeted merchant ships, disrupting global trade routes. The war was no longer just about Serbia and Austria. It had become a battle for global influence, economic dominance, and cross-continental power. Every major nation saw an opportunity to expand its territory, strengthen its influence, or, at the very least, avoid falling behind its enemies. The war had transformed into a massive monster devouring everything in its path, and this monster wasn't yet sated. World War I was more than just a matter of troop numbers. It was a testing ground for the most brutal weapons in history. In the trenches, soldiers faced unimaginable horrors. Poison gas, chlorine, phosgene, and mustard caused blindness, burns, and slow, agonizing deaths. The first tanks emerged, massive steel machines that could rip through barbed wire and crush trenches. Machine guns mowed down hundreds in minutes. Heavy artillery fired giant shells from tens of kilometers away, turning fields into craters of hell. Even the skies weren't safe. Fighter planes and reconnaissance balloons were deployed for bombing and spying. This war transformed how humans fought, from individual bravery to industrial-scale warfare driven by technology. Behind all these innovations, one thing became clear. Humans were getting smarter at killing each other. For 3 years, the United States maintained neutrality, trading with all parties while watching from afar. But everything changed in 1917. American merchant ships were continuously sunk by German U-boats, killing thousands of civilians. Then, a shocking secret document emerged, the Zimmermann Telegram. In it, Germany promised to help Mexico attack the U.S. if America entered the war. That was the final straw. President Woodrow Wilson couldn't stay silent anymore. In April 1917, America officially declared war on Germany, sending not just troops but also money, logistics, weapons, and new hope. Fresh American troops arrived in Europe, bringing a new wave of optimism. The world began to believe that maybe, just maybe, this war could be won. But the question remained, after all this destruction, what exactly would they be winning? This war wasn't just about battlefields, it was the apocalypse for centuries-old empires. Russia was the first to crumble. The people were starving, the troops were exhausted, and the government couldn't control the situation. In 1917, Tsar Nicholas II abdicated, a revolution erupted, and the communists took power. The Russian Empire came to an end, and the country withdrew from the war. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary was collapsing from within, plagued by ethnic tensions and internal conflicts. The people lost faith in their aging emperor. The Ottoman Empire, which once spanned 3 continents, also crumbled under a series of defeats and Arab uprisings. Even Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, once celebrated, was now despised by his own people and eventually fled to the Netherlands. This war didn't just kill millions, it ended an era of monarchies. The world was changing, but where was it headed? November 11, 1918, 11 a.m., the last cannons finally fell silent. Germany signed the armistice, soldiers returned home. Europe was quiet for the first time in years. But there was no celebration, no cheering, only devastation remained. Cities lay in ruins, millions were dead, millions more were maimed, and a generation lost hope. The victors gathered in Paris to craft a peace treaty, but the peace they forged was far from just. Germany was forced to take the blame for the entire war, saddled with massive reparations, territorial losses, and a crippled military. The German people felt humiliated, betrayed, and wounded in their pride. Many historians would later say World War I ended in 1918, but the seeds of World War II were sown in that same year.